Have you ever met one of those people who just can't be stopped? It's like they're unstoppable.
Yeah, I have.
Me too.
What's their mystique?
Nothing stops these people.
Don't stop.
Welcome to Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso. You're about to meet some of the most amazing people.
Stop. Don't stop.
They've accomplished their goals despite insurmountable odds. They beat adversity, physical hardship, and traumatic events, and emerged triumphantly. They're people just like you and me, and they're winners. Are you unstoppable? Here's Frankie to show you how.
Well, hello there, and welcome to Mission Unstoppable. Boy, we have a great show for you today, and I want to thank you all for joining us. Today, we are going on a Mission Unstoppable to a time and place where past meets present and the future. My guest today is Jonathan Sands. He's a professional speaker and author whose unstoppable mission is to continue the amazing legacy that his great-grandfather, Sir Winston Churchill, left the world, and to work with both present and future generations to inspire great leadership that values faith, courage, and integrity. Jonathan, you made a statement. We need Churchillian leaders today, and my responsibility is to teach them to lead like Churchill with courage, faith, and integrity. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much indeed. It is very exciting to be on your show, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, it's just such a pleasure to be with you. And I wanted to ask you, what does it mean then to lead like Churchill, and why do we need Churchillian leaders today?
Well, first of all, Churchill led very much with courage. He was, if you look at the 1930s, you see that he was the lone voice standing warning of the rising threat of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. Mm-hmm. But he was absolutely firm in his belief that he was right. And so he showed great faith in doing that. His integrity came into play when he refused to back down, despite the fact that everybody was vying against him and basically wanted him to shut up. Mm-hmm. And he refused point blank to shut up because he firmly did believe that this was right. So, we need leaders today that have that sort of courage to make a stand where they believe they're right, to have the faith to believe in themselves, even, when times are hard and things like that, but also the integrity to be honest, to remain standing, and to have a moral leadership, basically a leadership where they're not going to compromise, not lie or try and mislead other people or indeed the people. So, that's the type of leadership we're looking for.
Now, I know that Sir Winston was a great proponent of democracy, but would you think that there's a fine line between the dictatorship, it's my way and I believe this, and I, everybody else is saying no, but I'm saying yes, and we're going to go forward. Could that be misconstrued sometimes, do you think?
A dictatorship is a person who, defined by a person who won't listen to anyone else and will frighten you and threaten you into doing what they want. Great-grandpa, yes, certainly had his own view of how things should be done, how the war should be fought and things like that. And certainly did get upset with people when things didn't go the way that he had wanted them to. However, he recognized that, he needed to surround himself with people who actually complemented his weaknesses or other, made up for the weaknesses that he did have. Whereas Adolf Hitler's response as a dictator was to kill his opposition. I mean, he literally murdered his opposition. If you stood against Hitler, then you would be sent to the Russian front or indeed to Auschwitz or somewhere like that. So, that is really the difference.
That's important. And that's important to let people know, I think. That,
Yes.
there's a different operating system. It's, faith in what you believe in and standing up for the things that you believe in, whether everybody else is on board with you or not, is still different from somebody saying it's my way or I shoot you.
I mean, leaders are prepared to make decisions. Yes, okay. Ultimately, they are the ones who have to make the decision. And so, sometimes, yes, it would appear a dictatorship when a leader takes a specific decision. However, a democracy is defined by the fact that the leader, could be replaced at any moment. And indeed, as we saw in 1945, or has history recorded in 1945, Winston Churchill, having been the greatest successful leader of our time, was then kicked out of office and no longer prime minister. Whereas you see with Adolf Hitler, that could never have happened.
Right. It should have happened to our mayor in Toronto not too long ago, but it didn't happen there either. There's an interesting comment or quote actually on your website. And it's by Neil Bush, and he said, "We who bear the mantle of being descended from those who have made history are in a unique position to connect past and present, continuing the legacy entrusted to us with humanity and humility. In devoting his life to educating young and old about the life of his great-grandfather, Jonathan Sands is fulfilling that role well." And Neil Bush is the son of former President George H.W. Bush. Did you feel that this was your mantle to bear? Did you feel that you of all the ancestors that you needed to do this? Like, where did that come from?
Well, originally, I had gone through my life, at school and things, always being put down. I'm a product of dyslexia, and I was told by my peers at school and by teachers alike that I was useless, that I would never amount to anything, that I was always going to be a failure. And after 11 years of being told that, I left school with absolutely no qualifications whatsoever, firmly believing that I would always be a failure. And as a result, up until 2005. I went through about 70 different jobs and on many occasions was asked to leave those jobs because I was told I was over-enthusiastic, but nobody could ever explain what that actually was. Right. If I were an employer, I would much prefer to have an over-enthusiastic person working for me than somebody who had no enthusiasm whatsoever. But leaving that aside, I had really given up on life, and in 2005, a friend of mine suggested that I came over to the US and started talking about my great-grandfather. And I didn't think anyone would be that interested. And the next thing I know, she set up 2 appointments for me to speak at schools to students, one at a middle school and another at a high school. And I found the children absolutely enthralled. But what was more to the point is in the research that I was doing for that particular speech, which was an overview of great-grandpa's life, I had reread a book I hadn't read for many, many years, which was called My Early Life, which had been written by Churchill in the 1930s and naturally covered up to his the age of 25. Well, I found so many similarities between us in our youth from the time, not just at school, but also when, with the relationship, the bad relationship that he had with his father. I also didn't have a very good relationship with my father. And I found great inspiration. And suddenly I found myself really believing in myself. And I found a renewed inspiration. Suddenly I realized the more I studied about Churchill, the more I started to believe in myself and believe that pretty much as the American dream states, anything is possible with hard work. And so I felt, my gosh, if it could save my life, think how powerful that legacy would be to the rest of the world. And so I started making it my mission. I saw it very much as my mission to get out there, to share not only the experiences that I had had in my youth, but to use that and the life of great-grandpapa to inspire others, but to show that where I had given up and surrendered, Winston Churchill, in the same situation, had not. And that was the template that we needed really to follow. So that was really how it all came about.
Well, that's very interesting because in your book, God and Churchill, he was also called a failure. And his father said, "You're a failure. You never amount to anything."
Yes. A social wastrel.
A social wastrel. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And he loved nothing more than to go off to war and be in the midst of, all kinds of chaos, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he wanted ultimately to get into politics. And, he had seen a way. His father died in 1895, and it took away all of his hopes and his dreams of following in his father's footsteps and actually being at his side and entering Parliament and working for him. That ended that. And then what happened was he saw the British Army as a way to actually build a reputation for himself himself, which would then springboard him into politics, which obviously after South Africa, after his escape from the Boers in South Africa in 1899, that's exactly what it did. And, had that not happened, Churchill may well not have gone into politics.
Well, I'm sure that everybody wants to know where you grew up in England. Did you grow up in Chartwell? Like, where did you grow?
No, my gosh, I wish that I had grown up in Chartwell.
It's a beautiful home.
Wow. Oh gosh, I love Chartwell. It's beautiful. Well, I grew up in Surrey. Okay. Which is 45 minutes south of London, and we had a beautiful home, a place called Charnwood. I mean, absolutely gorgeous, and 2.5 acres of land and everything. It was really, really beautiful surrounding. But I have to say, I loved Charnwood to bits, but seeing Chartwell, I loved it more. And my mother doesn't share the same view, but I can see exactly why great-grandpapa bought it. Looking out at the Weald of Kent from his bedroom window, I could see exactly why he wanted to purchase Chartwell. It is so beautiful. It is so peaceful, and the age of the building. I mean, inside it looks gorgeous. It's amazing.
It is stunning. And there's a beautiful picture of you on your website, leadlightchurchill.org, where you're sitting in a red leather chair that Randolph sat in. So it was Churchill's father sat in it, and he sat in it, and then you sat in it. And it's absolutely, what a beautiful picture. And the paintings above, like famous artists, I'm sure.
Probably. No, those are all Churchill.
Churchill. Those were Churchill.
Paintings above it were always Churchill.
Just fantastic.
That was taken in his studio at Chartwell.
Oh, wow.
I'd love to tell you at some stage the story of the dream that Churchill had that, made that red leather chair very prominent in his life.
You can tell us that dream. I want to talk about that dream when we come back. We're going to go to break in just a minute. But let's talk. I want to talk about all of that. And there's also a famous statue in the garden, I think, that was unveiled by Queen Elizabeth of your two great-grandfathers.
Yeah, yes, it was actually unveiled by the Queen Mother, and yes, indeed, it was of my great-grandparents. Absolutely fantastic. But once again, when we come back from the break, I'll tell you a bit about that. It was quite an experience.
Wow. Yeah. Well, we are here with Jonathan Sands. He's a great-grandson of Sir Winston Churchill, and you are going to want to stick around. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back with some great stories.
Don't stop.
That's right, don't stop listening. Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso will continue right after these messages.
Stop.
Secret Cuisines and Sacred Rituals is a quest, a place, and a feast. Join host Vilasi Venkatachalam every week to explore myths, mystique, old medicine, and brilliant modern solutions through a dazzling kaleidoscope of cuisines, cultures, and cures. This is the place where tribes gather, strangers and familiars, to be memory keepers and makers of our evolving, enduring, evergreen, spoken legacy of wisdom and ingenuity. In Velasi's words, when we do old things in new ways and new things in old ways, we paint with an inspired palette, weave our own healing traditions, and become our own guru. Vilasi is a troubadour of secret cuisines and sacred rituals. She collects stories of wisdom, ingenuity, and grit. She believes wellness and transformation happen when you stand at the threshold of delight and discovery. She displays her hidden penchant for drama when she leads the Safari at the Supper Club. Her favorite pastime is to extol the marvels of cuisines, cultures, and cures. To her audience in workplaces, seminars, and salons, her mantra is, be your own guru. She is a biochemist, botanist, and alchemist who likes to churn delightful, useful things from a brew of art and science, ancient and evolving, old medicine, and new cures. Join Vilasi every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, only here on the Woohoo Radio Network.
It's words you never heard.
Okay, ladies, listen up. Did you know recent studies are suggesting that women with skinny waists but sizable hips are smarter than other women? Scientists at the University of Pittsburgh and the University of California gave cognitive tests to a group of 16,000 women and girls of different body types and found the women with the greatest hip-to-waist proportions scored higher. I guess that would make me a walking Encyclopedia Britannica. Now, hold on. That doesn't mean it's okay for us to be a powder pigeon. That's another name for a woman whose sizable hips can take up a whole supermarket aisle. Research suggests that the fat around fuller hips and thighs holds higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids, which helps the brain. I'm not sure if I would rather be able to do the Sunday crossword puzzle or get into those jeans I bought 10 years ago.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and Words You Never Heard has been brought to you by the Bariatric Surgery Center of Dallas.
Well, Jonathan Sand's still here. Are you? Of course you are. Why would you go anywhere? We were just talking to him about this famous red chair in Churchill's studio. And if you go to his website, leadlikechurchill.org, there's some photos in the gallery. And let me just see. I think it's on page. Yeah, it's on the second page. Those paintings are amazing. And I'm an artist, and I can tell you, I'm blown away. I'm going, I just love it. I couldn't wait. I saw this picture, Jonathan, and I went, I want to go there. I want to see the art.
Well, Chartwell is absolutely full of the art, and obviously the studio quite more so. We've actually got an exhibition that's going on in Fulton in Missouri at Westminster College, and I'm going to be going there in February at the end of that exhibition, and we're hanging various paintings of great grandpas. That's actually come from Atlanta. And we're hoping, I'm working on a deal at this moment in time to bring it over to Houston, because I know that it'll be fully appreciated here. And I'm actually talking to one of the major universities here, and they have expressed a great interest in hanging some of his paintings here. So that's going to be a very exciting thing. But going back to that particular photograph, the red leather chair, I promised you before the break that I would tell you the story of the dream. Well, in 1946, obviously, Churchill had been turned out of office in 1945, and he was painting in his studio, and he was copying a painting that had been done of his father that had sadly got ripped over the years. And he was copying this painting, and as he was doing it, suddenly he had what we would call a waking vision, where he saw his father sitting in that red leather chair. And over a period of about half an hour, they talked with each other. And Churchill updated his father on absolutely everything that had happened since his death in 1895. And it was amazing, because Lord Randolph was the last person in that entire conversation. Lord Randolph was the last person to speak, and he was absolutely gobsmacked by what his son had said. And he said to his son, basically, I'm absolutely amazed at what you've told me. I'm very pleased that I didn't live to see this. He said, you've told me a terrible tale. I would never have believed that such things could happen. And he said, as I listened to you unfolding these fearful facts, you seemed to know a great deal about them. I never expected that you would develop so far and so fully. Of course, you are too old now to think about such things. But when I hear you talk, I really wonder you didn't go into politics. You might have done a lot to help. You might even have made a name for yourself. Well, what amazed me about that was this was yet another example of great-grandpa's humility. And leadership for great-grandpa, indeed for any successful leader, has to begin with that sort of humility. Of all the people in Churchill's life and throughout Churchill's 90 years of life whom he wanted the approval of, it was his father he most sought that approval from. And in the one last opportunity that he had to basically to sound his own gong, to sing his own praises, he didn't once tell his father that I was prime minister, that I was the one who foresaw everything that was going to happen, that I led this country and the empire and indeed the world to safety and to freedom. And it was quite a telling thing, and it brings tears to my eyes when I talk about it in speeches and things like that. But it is one of the greatest examples that we have of Churchill's great humility when it came to his life, because he had been misunderstood so much in his throughout his political career. He'd been accused of being a warmonger, a troublemaker, a liar. He'd been accused of many things that were all unjustified and untrue, and he proved in many moments, not just during the war but after the war as well, how honourable he actually was and how much humility he really did have.
It's interesting, and I'm sorry because I can't remember the gentleman's name, but it was the prime ministership was almost thrust on him because nobody wanted to be a loser. They said, well, let's let the loser be the loser. Let his name go down in history as a big loser. And, really, wow, the joke's on them because he turned it all around and became the most famous person in history.
Well, actually, yeah, I mean, you are absolutely right when it comes to that, because I mean, certainly over the Gallipoli campaign in 1915, they basically wanted to throw Winston to the dogs because great grandpa was already unpopular, so what? Let's just throw the blame on him and refuse to let him sort of vindicate himself or attempt to vindicate himself. Well, the Second World War was yet again, another thing. And the choice actually was between Lord Halifax, who was an incredibly ambitious man and would have loved to have been Prime Minister, and between him and Winston Churchill. And Chamberlain, the Prime Minister at the time, very much wanted Halifax to be Prime Minister, as indeed did King George. Well, Halifax was not prepared to take control of Britain and to become Prime Minister, to merely hand the keys of Britain and indeed the empire over to Adolf Hitler. And he saw that it was, a surrender was going to be imminent. So he declined the offer. Well, of course, Winston Churchill firmly believed, and pretty much was the only person in leadership in Britain at that time, who actually did believe that we could beat Adolf Hitler, even at this late stage. And so, he willingly took the reins of power. Now, obviously, I mean, it could have gone all terribly, terribly wrong.
It could have. It could have. Yeah, and he had faith, and that was, I mean, if we look at your list of, lead like Churchill with this having faith and courage and integrity, Halifax, had no faith because he just assumed, oh, well, we're just going to, Germany's going to overrun us and we're just going to have to surrender and that's the end of it. I mean, who leads like that? You don't need a leader like that.
Well, you see, that's the trouble. A lot of leaders come forward these days who have a great deal of charisma. They can talk a great talk, and you follow them and you say, wow, this is amazing. They're an incredible leader. Love what he's saying, etc., etc., etc. However, the leader, you then discover, doesn't actually have the faith to back up. They don't believe in what they're talking about, and they don't have the faith to back it up. And so you quickly see that those that originally supported them no longer want to support them, and they walk away from them because of that lack of faith. Now, you see, Winston Churchill had the courage to stand. He had the faith to believe that this was possible and expressed that faith publicly. And he had the integrity, even when things were going bad, to be honest with the people and to say to them, look, at the outset, this isn't going to be a quick war. This is going to take many, many, many long months of hardship and of struggle. However, I do firmly believe that in God's good time, all will be well, and we will see a victory. And he never, ever moved from that position. And that was his ultimate goal, was basically to take Britain to that. Well, he was a leader not just with charisma, but he had that faith. And this is what we desperately need in leadership today. We need leaders like Churchill who have not just the courage to stand, because Adolf Hitler had courage. He had great courage to stand. We don't need leaders with just faith. They've got the courage to stand. They've got faith to actually stand, because once again, Adolf Hitler had great faith. He firmly believed that he was going to win the war and everything like that. Right. But we need leaders with integrity. We need leaders who will admit, we made a mistake here. This is our ultimate aim. The ultimate aim is victory. We've made a mistake here and we've made a mistake here. However, we're going to remedy it and put ourselves back on track by doing this. And that is what Winston Churchill was not afraid to do. He wasn't afraid to admit, we've made a mistake, but we're getting back on track here. And you see, this is why people followed him. People followed him because he had that courage to stand. They stayed with him because he had that faith. And they remained with him even through the bad times because he had the integrity to do what other leaders were not prepared to do, and that was to be honest.
I'm going to put you on the spot. You're a new American.
Okay, you're going to run me into a lot of problems with my own countrymen.
No, it's okay. This is my show.
I am a 16th American, and proud of the 16th American that I am.
Yeah, there we go. And but there's an election coming up. You have a Donald Trump. You have a Bernie Sanders. Who would you choose for a leader?
Oh my gosh, that really is putting me on the spot.
Well, you don't have to tell me who you choose, but let's look at these two guys for a moment in terms of leadership.
Well, in order to find the leader that you need to be president of the United States next year, you need to look at what they're saying and look at their track record. You need to see, do they have the courage that we need in this country to change things, because things really aren't that good at the moment. Things are not as good as some people are painting them to be. We need to know, does he have faith? Does he believe not just in his cause or her cause? It could be a woman who wins. What sort of faith do they have? Where do they place their faith? Churchill placed his faith in God, very firmly, and turned the hope of the people of Britain to God, and indeed to those people serving on the fronts, the Royal Air Force, the Royal Navy, and the British Army. He turned their hope to them. So he turned the faith away from himself, unlike Adolf Hitler, who turned it towards himself. Right. And then you need to look at the integrity. Do these people actually have integrity? For instance, some people look at Donald Trump and they say, well, he says the most terrible things. Others say, well, he's honest. He's saying what he believes. His own daughter said, well, he says what he believes. It may not come out in the best way. Right. So, that's what you need. That's the measuring stick that you need to use when you're looking at this.
But just because he's tough doesn't mean he's good.
No, it doesn't necessarily. No, tough does not mean good. Okay. Does he have courage? Courage comes with toughness. Does he have courage to stand up? Sure, he has courage to stand up. Does he have faith? What faith? Where is his faith based? And what sort of integrity does he have? That should answer the question on who you think should be the next president of the United States. And I hope.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Because I want to make a point, and I don't know if I can get it in the minute we have left. But 30 seconds. Okay. When we come back, I'm going to talk about Winston Churchill and how he represented the people and how he was very receptive to other cultures, unlike Donald Trump.
I'm not commenting on that.
Frankie said it. I said it. It's my show. I can say whatever I want. Donald, sorry. But stay tuned. If you like Donald, stick around. Tell me why. If you don't, you like Bernie, hey, call us. Anyway, we're coming back.
That's right. Don't stop listening. Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso will continue right after these messages.
Stop.
Homeschooling? Have questions? Get your pen and paper ready. It's the sociable homeschooler, Vivian McNinney. Fridays at 5, 4 Central on TogiNet.com. After a handsome blue-eyed Texan fell in love with Vivian at the Victoria Station in London, she found herself at DFW Airport with a tiny suitcase and a snazzy little duffel bag. Well, 25 years later, she is now happily married to that blue-eyed cowboy. They have 4 grown children ages 24 to 18 who became willing guinea pigs when she unwittingly stumbled upon the world of homeschooling. Wildflower Academy flourished for 15 years. They survived and thrived, and you can too. Vivian will be covering a wide range of issues that face homeschoolers. What do you do with kids in the summer? How to set up your one-room schoolhouse? How obedience is paramount? And what to do with those snakes? Plus, you'll be sharing ideas and insights that she gleaned from other homeschoolers. So join us for an engaging hour with the sociable homeschooler, Vivian McNinney. Friday afternoons at 5, 4 Central on TogiNet.com.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
According to the Mayo Clinic, chronic stress can lead to a variety of health and emotional problems, and yoga is a wonderful stress reducer. The core elements of Hatha Yoga are the poses and breathing. The poses, or postures, are a series of movements designed to increase flexibility and strength. The breathing is controlled, and the breath signifies your vital energy. They report that yoga can increase your fitness, reduce your stress, help you manage chronic health conditions, and even help with weight loss. Yoga can aid you in making healthy lifestyle changes necessary to gain control of your eating and drop those excess pounds. If you have ever wanted to try yoga, September is the perfect time because September is National Yoga Month. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond. visit our Facebook fan page at Fitness Minute with Annette Hammond.
Okay, we're back, and I'm taking Jonathan off the off the hot seat here. I'm gonna put him back on another hot seat though, because he was on my other show, Frankie Sense and More, a little while ago, and I totally forgot to mention this or ask him about his relationship with Lady Diana. Now, isn't she a cousin?
Yeah, she was a very, very distant cousin. You know, I mean,
how exciting is that?
The Churchills and the Spencers married into each other's family, you know, in the 1600s. So I mean, it was very, very distant. But you know, I had great respect. I had great respect for Diana. You see, there was a leader.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you know, the Princess Diana really was would have been a wonderful queen. I'm convinced. You know, just as I believe that Princess Catherine will be a great queen as well, you know. But if you look at Diana, if you look at what she actually did and the way that she went about things, she was a woman who had humility. She certainly reached out to the people. She didn't see herself above the people in any shape or form. She in fact saw herself as one of the people. She was the very first person to go on television, on international television, as a celebrity and hold a baby who had AIDS, and thus proved you can't get AIDS from touching someone, you know, picking up a baby or showing care. She's the only leader, you know, at that time, to my knowledge, that dared to walk through a minefield.
I was just going to say that. Walk through minefields.
Yeah. But, you know, she was
courageous.
She was very courageous. She showed great courage, and she certainly showed faith, and certainly had integrity. And I remember a story that my parents told me. When they first met her, just after she had got engaged, and they were at a party, and she and Prince Charles were on the receiving line, and, you know, greeted the prince and everything and moved on. And then Diana was wearing this really strange hat, a French hat, and obviously she was Lady Diana in those days. Sure. And my father looked at her and smiled and said, "Are you sure that you're wearing that the right way?" And, you know, if it had been, there are certain other members, you know, who would have responded rather badly to that. I'm sure a lot of people who would have responded fairly badly to that. But what surprised me and really came out in her later life was the fact that her immediate response was to put her hands on the hat and say, "My gosh, do you think so? Do you, I don't know. Do you think it's right?" Yeah. And, you know, that was a typical example. They'd never met. You know, and that was the first comment my father made to her. And, you know, a bit like his grandfather, you know, he was a bit boisterous with that. But, you know, I mean, but Lady Diana immediately, you know, with all humility, my gosh, you know, I don't want to make a bad impression or anything like that. You know, I really, you know, and that was the type of life that she lived. That was the type of person that she was. And we see those amazing qualities in both Prince William and in Princess Catherine. Yes. Incredible qualities of love, of humility. I'm so confident that when the throne of England passes to Prince William, it will be in incredibly safe hands, just as it has been with Her Majesty presently. Because, you know, Her Majesty the Queen was born into an era where, you know, where the royal family was very much distant, and that was how we wanted them. But she has adapted and changed so much of the face of Britain by, you know, by her compelling way of being part of the people and seeing, you know, seeing herself as, yes, I'm your queen and everything. And no, I'm, you know, I'm not necessarily going to come around to tea with you all the time, but at the end of the day, you know, I don't see myself as anything better than you. You know, I'm your leader. As your queen, I'm your leader, and I love you, and I want to show you my care and my care. And that's what she has done over the years, and that's why she's a beloved queen. And
the Queen Mum was so beloved.
Yes, the Queen Mother was
much loved.
I had the pleasure of meeting her some years ago. You mentioned the statue at
That's right.
That was unveiled in the early part of the 90s. And I was privileged to have been invited to go to that unveiling. And I actually only like one half of the statue. The statue is of both great-grandparents. Mm-hmm. And when it apparently the story goes that originally this statue was placed in Westerham, which is where Chartwell is. And when great-grandma saw the depiction that Oscar Niemann had done of her, she really didn't like it, and she asked if he would please remove it. And so he did. He took it away, and he actually cut it in half and put the half back that she liked, which was of great-grandpapa, and left hers out. And then, later on, that statue was then sort of recast and placed at Chartwell in the 90s. Right. And I was there at the unveiling when the Queen Mother was there, and I was looking at the little miniature that had been given to her as a gift. And she came over to me, and you don't speak to the royal family. The royal family speak to you and you reply. Right. And she came over to me and said, "It's a really good likeness, isn't it?" And I looked at her kind of shocked, and I said, "Yes, Your Majesty, it is. It's very good." I remember slightly stuttering, when I spoke to her. But we had a conversation, and she asked me, where do you fit into the family and things like that. It was like having a conversation, with you. It's just a normal conversation. No airs and graces. You wouldn't have known that she had been a Queen of England, or indeed was the Queen Mother. She was just a normal human being. And that was exactly what great-grandpapa was like. From studying his life, from hearing the stories, that's precisely what he was like. He would walk around after the bombings in London, after the terrible Blitz and things. He would go out with great-grandmama, and they would go to the worst bomb sites of the night before. And there was one occasion that this woman was being pulled out of the rubble, and Churchill literally fell to his knees and took her hand, and they talked, quietly talked all the time, him holding her hand while she was being pulled out of the rubble. And when she was pulled out, they started to take her away and things, and she thanked him. And great-grandpa, with tears in his eyes, looked over and pointed at her and said, "There goes a true hero." That was the type of person that great-grandpapa was. He never saw himself as anything better or worse than the people, that he was equal to them. Yes, I'm your leader, and I want you to follow me, but I am no better than you. And, and so he related to people, and that's why people very much related to him. And that was the reason people related to Princess Diana, and then obviously to the Queen Mother and to the Queen.
Do you think that his wife Clementine, I think, they shared a really great love. You could tell that because she was with him in places that women didn't normally be with their husbands. Like, women weren't always around their politicians and prime minister. They just stayed at home. But he was very close to her and wanted her around a lot.
She was a great influence on his life. I've actually been reading recently a brilliant book that has been brought out by a woman called Sonia Purnell, and she's just written a biography on Clementine. I haven't completed the entire biography as yet, but it depicts a side of a side of that relationship that maybe is not completely spoken about that much, but it was quite a tumultuous relationship. He was quite a difficult person to live with. Right. Lovely chap, but he could be very, very difficult to live with and very tiring at times. But she stuck with him. She very much saw it as her responsibility to bring out the good qualities in him and to support him as a politician's wife. And that was one of the most amazing things about her, was the strength that she very much provided great-grandpapa with. And, she would often offer advice to him. And Churchill didn't particularly like people's advice against what his decisions were. But with her, she had the strength of character to stand up to him and wasn't going to be bullied. She wasn't prepared to let herself be pushed around. And so she found a way of communicating with him. She took the time to actually find a way of communicating with him. And this really appealed to him. And at one point, Sonia Purnell points out that, during the First World War, when Churchill was First Lord of the Admiralty, Clementine knew more about the situation than some of the cabinet ministers. Mm-hmm. He would consult her at every point. And, her advice wasn't always taken, but, invariably when it was taken, it was a success. The one time that we see that great-grandpapa didn't take her advice and really paid the price for that was really in 1945. Over the 1945 election. I'm forever asked, why did Churchill lose that election? Mm-hmm. And I have to say that I maintain it's because he didn't listen to great-grandmama. Spouses do offer an incredible amount of strength and support. I know certainly for myself that my wife Sarah offers that incredible strength to me. But she advised him not to make a speech likening the socialists to the Gestapo. This was obviously in 1945. The war had literally just sort of finished in Europe and was still raging on abroad in the Pacific and things. And she advised him, do not make this speech. You will make yourself very unpopular. But he decided, I'm going to go ahead and do it. And he did it. And as a result, I firmly believe that as a result, he lost the 1945 election because it turned so many people against him, despite the greatness that he had done, the great things that he had achieved. So, it does pay. And I have, my own personal testimony is to say that, I've listened to my wife on many occasions. She's never steered me wrong. And when I haven't listened to Sarah, I've invariably found like great-grandpapa, and I've fallen flat on my face.
Well, the saying behind every great man is a great woman is, didn't just happen.
No, I have to say, Frankie, it's absolutely true. In the book that I'm writing at the moment, Lead Like Churchill, Courage, Faith, Integrity, we're certainly bringing that out and showing how spouses, either male or female, being outside the situation can most definitely be of the greatest support on the inside. And that very much is something that we are showing in Lead Like Churchill, and that's something that I draw on quite a lot.
You, when we come back, I want to talk about your new book, Lead Like Churchill, and there's a survey that you are asking people to take that you would like them to take. So let's talk about that when we get back from the break. And if you stick around, you can find out how you can take the survey and why you should take the survey. That'd be kind of interesting. Meanwhile, think about your spouse and how they help you every day in every way and how your life is made better by them. Because, just thinking about that love keeps that love alive, I should say. Stick around. We're going to come right back in just a few moments. Thank you so much.
Don't stop.
That's right, don't stop listening. Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso will continue right after these messages.
Don't stop.
Listen, something is brewing. The beautiful business evolution is coming. The way we do business is about to change for the better, forever. This is real business at its very best. On Beautiful Business Radio, you will learn what it means to truly prosper, how to nourish yourself and your business, how to earn what you deserve and make a difference in the world. The tide is rising, the change is here. Discover a new way to live, love, and partner with yourself and your business on Philippa Rowlands Presents Beautiful Business Radio, where you matter and your business thrives, every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, only here on the Woohoo Radio Network.
Martha Sanchez, the host of the Mommy to Mogul radio show, empowering women to build a successful business, invites you to join her on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. At the ripe age of 5, she was already interpreting information in documents and instructions on forms for her immigrant parents. Now, through her experience and those of her guests, she provides you with valuable steps to empower you to reach financial independence. Martha A. Sanchez is a registered nurse with a Bachelor in Nursing and Master's of Business Administration. She's a business coach, speaker, author, and CEO of Moss International, LLC. Her diverse work experience brings you expertise in areas essential to customer service, social media, and budgeting. The Mommy to Mogul radio show furthers her personal mission of empowering women to help them build successful businesses so they can reach financial independence. Join Martha Sanchez, the host of the Mommy to Mogul radio show, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Hey, you're back on Mission Unstoppable. I am your host, Frankie Picasso. My guest today is Jonathan Sands. He's a great-grandson of Winston Churchill. He's also the author of a book, God in Churchill, where if you read it, you'll find out a lot more about Churchill and his spiritual faith in God and how some things he felt was actually preordained to happen. It's kind of interesting. Jonathan, you are going to put up a survey on your site shortly.
Yes.
And you would like to know what from people?
Well, basically, what I've done is I'm in the throes of doing research for my new book, as you've said, Lead Like Churchill. And what I'm trying to achieve at the moment is to show the relevance of Winston Churchill, not just in his time, but also now, because, his leadership is something that we certainly do need at this moment in time. And so I've got a small survey of 3 questions that I'm asking people to basically complete, talking about, the first time that they were introduced to Winston Churchill, their first impression, not necessarily in person. This is, maybe you were introduced through stories that your parents told you or grandparents told you or something like that. So your first initial impression of Winston Churchill, how has Churchill's life and leadership or his words inspired you in your own life, if at all? And indeed, in your opinion, what is the relevance of Winston Churchill today? So those are the 3 questions, and I've given examples on each of those as to what I'm looking for from the point of view of an answer. And you can write as much or as little as you like. What I'm going to do is I'll give you the link, and if you want to put it up for your show and things, then you can do that. And I will get that onto my website, live on my website today. But also you can actually get it through my Facebook site, which if you go to facebook.com/WSC speaker, then you will find that it will be prominent on that as well.
Perfect.
Okay, but that will be up very, very shortly at this moment. So if it's not up already, it will be up in literally moments. So by all means go there, and I would welcome all input from that. It will help so much with my research. I've had about 50 responses so far. And actually, it was an idea that originally sprung from an online publication that I did called Impressions of Churchill, which you find at impressionsofchurchill.com. And that basically was the basis that I started with when I started Lead Like Churchill. So.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll have people go there and answer those questions for you. Your book, you expect it to come out in 2017, is that correct?
That is our hope, yes, indeed. I'm going to be doing this with a co-author. I'm doing this again with Wallace Henley,
nice.
Because we worked so well together as a team on the previous project on God and Churchill, and, we saw no reason to separate from each other. Wallace brings to the mix an incredible amount of experience when it comes to leadership, from the point of view that he worked in Nixon's White House for some years everything. So he saw leadership, straight up. He's also the senior associate pastor of Second Baptist Church, which is one of the largest churches in the United States, with a congregation of near to 70,000 people.
Wow.
So, I mean, he's experienced leadership firsthand. And so we've decided we're going to team up on this, and we are busy working on the research at this moment in time. He's waiting for bits and pieces from me, and I've got some pieces from him and things. So we're just sort of going through that and mulling over it.
So let's go back to your family. You told me off air there that you have a brother and a sister, and unfortunately another sibling who passed, a younger sibling. What do they think about you doing all of this?
Very, very supportive.
Nice.
To the point that when we had the book launch in Houston, we had it at Barnes and Noble just up the road, and everything. And I'd been asking. I was disappointed because my mother wasn't going to be able to come over for it, and neither was my sister. And I didn't expect Duncan, my older brother, to be able to come over, because he had said, I'm sorry, I don't really have the time. Well, I turned up at the actual event itself, and I was talking to some people, and suddenly Duncan appeared out of the corner of my eye. And I thought, wow. I mean, that absolutely changed me completely, and made the night so much better, because he had come to support me. And it was absolutely wonderful. I just felt so overwhelmed by that. And then in London, my mother and my sister were both at the Cabinet War Rooms when we did the book launch in London. But more to the point was my little niece, Iona. And Iona is like the sweetest little thing. She's sort of 4 years old and everything. She is the sweetest little thing in the world. And she was going around saying to people, she had her book. She said, I got my book. Where's your book?
Love it.
And being really good at selling and things like that.
Yeah, your new marketing manager. Yeah.
So, I mean, I had great support from them, and great support from my brother-in-law, from David, and who's married to my sister, and everything. And it was wonderful. They've been so supportive of everything that I've been doing and everything I'm continuing to do, even to the point that they've all contributed to the survey that we were speaking about, talking about church's relevance.
Wonderful.
And so they are, they, depending on whether I decide to cite them or not, they'll probably appear in the book.
Nice. Yeah. I just tell people, like, you are married to Sarah, and you have a young son, Jesse, and you have a new one on the way.
A new one on the way. Yes, indeed. Yes, due in May.
Do you have a name for her yet?
We do, but I'm not going to share the name.
That's okay.
Because I haven't yet told my family, and Sarah's family haven't yet they're not sure on it at the moment. So that's something I need to share with the family first. I apologize.
No, don't apologize. Hey, I have to ask.
But I will let you know as soon as as soon as I can. I will let you know.
Awesome. That's so good. I love it. You and Sarah were taking people on tours to England. To places where Churchill was. Tell us about that.
Well, basically, I created what was a very high-end tour of England, going to the locations that Winston Churchill had been part of, places like the Cabinet War Rooms and Blenheim Palace, Chartwell, etc., etc. And it was an incredibly high-end tour from that point of view. And I've actually decided now to scale it down a bit, but still to offer the actual tours themselves. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how many people have actually expressed an interest in doing that. And once I've got the research out of the way for Lead Like Churchill, then I'm going to really start plugging that for 2017. But that will be a tour that you will go around the places that were relevant to Winston Churchill. You'll have the opportunity potentially to have dinner with a member of Parliament, and you'll see Chartwell. You'll see the one room that is not open to the general public, which is my great-grandfather's bedroom at Chartwell. We'll go to Blenheim Palace and see where he was born. And spent a lot of time, certainly in the research of his books on Marlborough, and then we'll take a trip down the River Thames on the Haven Gore. and we will go behind the glass at the Cabinet War Rooms, and you'll have the opportunity to go behind the glass, and for a limited number of people, you'll get the chance to actually sit in his chair. Wow. But the idea is that, the tour will be limited to a specific number of people, so that we can have intimacy and have great fun together, as opposed to just sort of, everybody's there and it's, nobody has any personal contact or anything like that. That's very important, I think.
And would they stay in a hotel somewhere, or
yes.
B&B, or?
Yeah, the plan is that they will stay at the Churchill Hyatt Hotel. I've got a very good relationship with the Churchill Hotel. It's a Hyatt hotel, and it's in London. And I got a very good relationship there. And naturally, because it bears the name, that's the place for them to go. But
good for them too. What's something like that cost?
Well, the price that I was putting out for the original tour was $25,000.
Wow.
And it was for a 10-day tour. But I mean, bear in mind that it was most certainly 5-star all the way through, all expense paid, nothing spared.
Right.
This next tour, we haven't priced it out, but I'm trying to keep it as low as possible, whereas also, adding some of those important parts to the actual tour itself.
Sounds amazing.
Well, it's very much hope it's going to be amazing. And if you want an idea of what it might look like, there is actually a website that should still be live called wscint.com. And if I'm right, it's still live, but that shows you no, it doesn't. No, it's not there. There was a brochure for the original tour that I was off. Okay. But yeah, so that's basically what I'm planning for next year.
Well, we've got just 3 minutes left in the show. Jonathan, what would you like to tell folks about what's going to happen next with you, other than the traveling and the new baby and the book? If people want to come and see you speak, you are still speaking around.
Oh, yes. I'm actually doing a tour of the United States with my book. I'm going to be going to Missouri. I'm going to be going to Atlanta. I'm hoping to get to New York. I've got California on the cards as well. I'm doing some speaking engagements over in California. I'm going to St. Louis at the end of this, not the end of this week, at the beginning of next week. I'm flying off to St. Louis for an educational conference. Los Angeles is on the cards, Colorado at the end of February and things. So, there are various places that people can hear me speak, and most certainly at some stage I should probably post a diary of events.
You're coming to Canada, aren't you?
Sorry?
Aren't you coming to Canada? Even the royalty come to Canada.
Canada is very much a place that I would very much like to go. It's a matter of finding the openings and receiving the invitations to go and speak there. But Canada is a place that my great-grandfather really loved visiting. And I most definitely would love to visit Canada if the opportunity arises, not just to talk about my book, but also to talk about Churchill's leadership, and indeed to talk about his love of Canada.
For sure.
He did love Canada, just as he loved the United States, and he very much celebrated his relationship to the United States. And I always maintain that because he was half American and half British, that's very much why we won the war, because it was that get up and go, that belief, courage that really sort of stood out in his leadership. And
I'm going to stop you there because I want to say goodbye to you. I want to say thank you so much, Jonathan Sands, for coming on Mission Unstoppable, sharing your life with us. Such a pleasure to speak to you. You're just such a wonderful guy and so much fun. And I really, really do appreciate you coming back and chatting with us. And I can't wait for the new book. And when that comes out, please let us know and we'll have you back on the show.
I shall send you a copy. Frankie, thank you so much indeed for everything.
Thank you so much. Oh, and my dad says thanks for the book, too.
And say hi to him.
I will. Thank you.
They didn't stop. Stories of people who, when the odds were against them, turned defeat into victory. You've been listening to Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso. See you next time, and always remember...
Don't stop.
Information about book publishing is power. The power to change your authoring life and the power to change the lives of your readers.